The Pokemon Go Plus Plus has got to be one of the best accessories to utilize with playing Pokemon Go. When we had the announcement of this device, it was an extremely exciting time because not only did it boast that it was going to spin and catch automatically, but it also featured the ability to utilize Great Balls and Ultra Balls. The sad fact is, it can't automatically use Great and Ultra Balls. Or can it? Today's video, I'm going to be dissecting the Pokemon Go Plus. We're going to be taking it apart. We're going to be modifying it so that it can automatically use Greats and Ultras and be the device that we always wanted it to be. Disclaimer. If you choose to do this, I'm not responsible for any damages. Opening this and modifying it also does void your warranty, so just be wary. To get started, you'll need a soldering iron, wire, and mini T-knuckle switches. I'll have a link to everything down in the description. I know a lot of people who have a very minimal experience with soldering. To be honest with you, I'm going to be one of those folks as well. If you grew up in the same era as me and you've played Pokemon Red, Blue, Yellow, Gold, Silver, Crystal, you'll probably know that these save batteries don't last for very long. If you've got experience with replacing the save batteries, I'm going to go ahead and say that that's the level of skill that you need in order to proceed. With that being said, let's go ahead and get into this. I am using an electronic screwdriver. The driver head is going to be a Y000. I am using these guys. I think they're called mini T-knuckle switches. So as you can see, there's 3 prongs to them. Before we even get started, I'm just gonna break one of them off. We don't need 3, we just need 2. The next thing that you'll need is some wire. When I first started doing these, I was using a really thick wire. This thing is gigantic. It is not the kind of wire that we want. I just don't like this. This is no good. I utilize a single strand, so there is no fraying whatsoever. We are gonna use 2 of these guys to get started, 2 wires. I start by stripping it back. What I'm going to do is wrap the exposed part of the wire. After wrapping it around, we wanna make sure that we're not making contact with the other pin. 1 wire, 1 pin. If they touch, if the solder connects the 2, this is not gonna work. So again, we strip back part of our wire. There it is right there. It's single strand, so it makes it nice and easy. And we're gonna do the same thing that we did before. Okay, so again, I used tweezers that time. It was pretty easy. That is step 1. And as you can see, these guys are tightly attached. They're neatly attached. And there is 0 connection between the green wire and the orange wire. They cannot touch. So, I'm turning on the soldering iron. I'm not a professional. If you don't know about soldering, I recommend watching a soldering tutorial instead of coming here because I am not an expert, I'm not a pro. Start with this little orange guy. Again, I'm gonna do everything in my power to make sure it's visible. Be careful, this is a really hot iron. Okay, my recommendation too is your right side prong, drag it away from the left side. You do not need a ton of solder. Also, hold this guy down with the other wire. This thing is made of metal. Metal transfers heat rather well. You don't want to get burned from this guy. All right, perfect. Notice there is not a ton of solder on there, but there is just enough to make sure that the wire doesn't go anywhere. So we're gonna do the same thing over here. Swoop, swoop, swoop. Again, dragging it away. Perfect. I'm gonna turn my soldering iron off. Just taking a look, the solder that I added does connect the wire to the pins. You don't need a ton, you just need to make sure that those wires aren't going anywhere. Here we go. This guy's dead. You should probably do it when it's dead. It's not necessary. Also, am I the only one who gets like fruit roll-up vibes from this? Dead as can be, we would have a power indicator up there. Pushing this button would also illuminate white. And this is how we get into the device. We have 2 Y000 screws. And then this is our speaker port. Bottom of the device is our focus. So we're gonna start by removing our 2 screws. So now this guy is ready to open. Squeeze the bottom. Where my second finger is over there, that's where I wanna make my thumb on over to. And the reasoning is because the battery goes diagonally, we wanna watch out for the adhesive. You could hear a click. I got a clean removal right there. To get started, we have a series of screws that need to be removed. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 that hold the battery in place. And we're also gonna take this 7th one out of the way. That is the screw that is holding our speaker in. You can utilize the same exact screwdriver that you use to open the device. Now that we have our 6 screws out, we're gonna go ahead and pull our battery back. This part I think is really important. Our battery connector gets pulled back. Lift up from the bottom of these guys because we don't want to damage or break our battery connector. If you do,
These are the exact same batteries that are utilized in the Nintendo Switch controllers, so you can buy replacements, but obviously you'll probably want to stick with your original. Now that the battery's off, we're going to go ahead and take care of our speaker. Lift up. This little piece of plastic that's attached to this speaker needs to come off as well. I like to put my fingernail back where the screw hole is and just kind of pull on it on the back corner, pushing down over here, pulling back over there. Hooray! Now this guy gets thrown in the trash. This guy is gonna stay right here, and he's not gonna be in his plastic shell deliberately, because you see this little port right here? This is a grate or a grill or whatever you want to call it. There's a little thing of mesh in there that's almost impossible to see. And what I'm gonna do, is I'm gonna poke through it. So with my screwdriver, you can see, I'm gonna use a pair of tweezers to pull. So this guy was what was on there. We went ahead and removed it because our little switch is gonna go right in there for ease of access for turning on auto. We're gonna push into our charger port gently, and the keyword is gently. Now that we've done that, I'm gonna take the head of my screwdriver. I'm actually gonna go under this guy right here and push him up. There we go. Now we address the main board. All three screws are out. There was one there, and another one underneath right there. Now we can remove our board out. So be careful. There's a button right there, and subsequently it looks like the little piece of plastic that goes with it stayed on. That is totally fine. Okay, so this is what the opposite side of the bottom motherboard looks like. You've got two wires. We have a red and a black. We are going to desolder the black one. This is where our nifty switch comes into play that we prepped before starting this. Soldering iron gets flipped on. So the black wire is off. Now we're just gonna strip the tiniest bit of the edge of our other wire that we're gonna be connecting. I think I stripped back too much. There we go. And we're just gonna swoop. Wonderful. And again, you don't really want to add solder to these because you want these to be the same size and shape as what they were before so that the shell can fit flush. We are good to go now with this board, so we can go ahead and start putting all of this back together. Okay. Button up here is at the top, this is the side, and this is the bottom. So we're gonna just slowly but surely make our way back. But I always like to put my vibrating motor back in. In theory, yeah, you probably could cut it out, but this disables vibration by default. Wonderful posts in here that are your guidance for where should this go. Good, they're both in there. Another thing to be super cognizant of is this ribbon cable and this wire have their own lanes. They need to stay in their lanes, otherwise you might have problems with your LEDs over here. We're gonna grab our golden screws and we're just gonna put them back in. And the third one goes underneath this charging port. Wonderful. Now we're gonna go ahead and get our two silver screws back. Again, you wanna be as delicate as possible because this guy right here, he can be really fragile. We got our screws. There's screw number one, and here comes the second. Before we get started and flip over to our other guy, I'm gonna push our speaker port in. Make sure that your cables are away from these posts because screws are gonna go in them and you don't want your wire getting caught in the way. We already got rid of our grate, which is wonderful. Some might say it's pretty great. Sorry. And we just have the tiniest bit of wire wrapping around. Again, this is the reason as to why we go for the thin wire, because it's gonna make cable management / shutting this case much, much easier. Sweet. But now, we're done with bottom board. Obviously, we'll come back, we'll screw our battery back in after, but we got a top board to do because we've got this green wire and we got to do something about it, right? Hold on to your board. This guy especially is really flimsy. It's just not, it doesn't weigh as much as the bottom one, so they have a tendency to move around. You don't want to gently hold this, have it twist, and then rip your cable, because if you do, you're out of luck. Also, don't be like me. Don't forget to turn your soldering iron off when it's not in use. Now we're gonna go ahead and flip this guy over. This guy goes off to the side. The green wire is gonna go on the outside of the ribbon cable. So I kind of crimp it over there. Their batteries are gonna go in this corner, so you don't need it to go very far, but you just kind of wanna get an idea as to how long your wire should be. Okay. So again, we got this guy loosely slotted over here where our switch is. He's in our speaker port. And now it's time for this guy to get soldered. So we're gonna flip. And again, I kind of crimped my cable to give me an understanding of about how much space that I need. You don't need a ton of space beyond your little divot. We only have to solder one thing, but it's very small. And this is the tough part. But do you see this guy right here? That's where we're soldering to. To the left, there's 2 capacitors. To the right, there's 2 capacitors that are even smaller. We have to be extremely careful with this next part because we cannot touch the capacitors. We can't have solder touching these guys. Otherwise, it's gonna screw with the way that the button works. We're gonna turn our soldering on. You want the tiniest amount of additional solder on this piece because we're just gonna cover the top of this wire. Okay. Again, the tiniest bit of wire exposed. My solder goes up a tad, but again, you've got globs over there. We're not touching anything else. This is done. All right, so flipping it back around, this is what we're left with. This guy is a little loose and wonky still. We're gonna address that as we start to close the shell. The cool thing about it is our battery is actually gonna help us keep this switch in place so that it doesn't get pushed back and become inaccessible. Yeah. Again, make sure you hold down this guy when you're screwing him in. As you saw there, it kind of twisted. You don't want to do damage to your things. This is a masterpiece. This was done completely and totally flawlessly. Again, small wires are going to help your cable management immensely. I forgot that my battery's dead. We should probably plug it in. So I'm just gonna leave it loose like that. I'm gonna plug it in for a few minutes. If you see a power indicator up here, you're probably good. I've had the Go Plus plugged in for about an hour and a half now. You do need to have this device connected to an account in order to test it. Clicking the button, we see white light. It's just gonna shut off. That's because we have auto turned off right now on our switch here. So we're gonna go ahead and flip our switch. Pikachu goes into sleep mode and immediately wakes up. And sleep mode again and wakes up. I'm gonna flip it off. The reason why it's doing that is because every time a vibration signal is sent, the button is being pushed. That's what enables us to auto throw greats and auto throw ultras. If you don't want it to auto sleep while it's disconnected from your device, I'll show you how to do that, but first let's go ahead and seal it up. You will have one leftover screw. That's gonna be from the speaker grate that we took out. We don't need it anymore, so you can go ahead and just get rid of it. So now it's time to seal it up. There's this little prong right up here that is supposed to safely tuck away from the ribbon cable. Start up there, and then we're gonna grab our 2 screws. Okay, and again, to test auto, we're just gonna flip our switch, and there we go. Automatic's working. So as it goes into sleep mode, it'll automatically go out. If we plug it in after it goes blue, Pikachu will stay in sleep mode and you can just connect to the device tomorrow morning and get your sleep rewards. Now, if you disconnect from power, it's gonna continue to go back and forth between sleep mode and no sleep mode. If you want it to stop that, just flip your switch. There we go. No more automatic, and it's not plugged in. Do you need auto back on? Just flip it back on. Okay.
Okay.